The deep subsonic pulse of a marine diesel engine sends constant tremors through the hull of a massive crude carrier. The vessel cuts through 26 degrees Celsius waters, navigating the narrow gap between the steep black ophiolite cliffs of the Musandam Peninsula and the Iranian coastline. Deep within the 330-meter steel belly of the ship sloshes 2 million barrels of unrefined crude oil. This compressed prehistoric organic matter serves as the primary fuel source sustaining modern civilization. A popular belief insists that the 21st century runs primarily on digital data, silicon microchips, and renewable energy grids. The clinical reality remains far more primitive. The entire architecture of human civilization is physically tethered to a single 39-kilometer-wide geographic trap known as the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow passage serves as a planetary choke point rather than a standard shipping lane. Every day, roughly 20 million barrels of extracted hydrocarbons must navigate this vulnerable bottleneck, accounting for a full 1/5 of total global daily energy consumption. The core struggle in these waters involves an unending logistical routine operating within highly unstable territories. Desert nations have built towering financial empires by extracting these hydrocarbons from subterranean reserves. Their sustained wealth depends entirely on keeping this narrow aquatic corridor completely unobstructed. The operational capacity of every global supply chain, industrial factory, and mechanized military force relies on the uninterrupted transit of these steel leviathans. Severing this single marine artery would systematically collapse the international economy within a matter of weeks. Beneath the surface of this waterway, immense mechanical pressure dictates every movement. While the strait spans 21 miles across at its narrowest physical point, the actual navigable shipping lane remains astonishingly restrictive. Megaships are locked into a rigid traffic separation scheme mandated by international maritime authorities, forcing vessels into strict 2-mile-wide inbound and outbound lanes. A highly regulated 2-mile buffer zone separates these opposing flows of heavy steel. This global positioning system-guided choreography handles not only crude oil, but also a massive portion of the global liquefied natural gas supply. This relentless maritime highway operates under constant military and civilian surveillance, with Omani radar pickets stationed at the Goat Island Naval Base monitoring every transponder signal. The physical mechanics of this transit require immense precision from bridge crews navigating a maximum water depth of 300 feet. This shallow basin provides only marginal clearance for the colossal drafts of fully laden supertankers extending over 70 feet below the waterline. Deviation from the established lanes risks a catastrophic grounding or a direct collision with oncoming traffic. The daily execution of this transit serves as a clinical exercise in extreme risk management. Captains must continuously calculate for treacherous tidal currents and severe maritime congestion while steering hundreds of thousands of tons of highly combustible cargo. The international shipping lanes brush dangerously close to heavily fortified coastlines equipped with sophisticated anti-ship batteries. Within this rigid geographic funnel, the margin for operational and navigational error remains effectively zero. The most formidable unseen challenge within this bottleneck remains the threat of asymmetric warfare. This geographic trap strips massive vessels of their primary defense mechanism, leaving them unable to utilize the vastness of the open ocean. This vulnerability became critically apparent during the tanker war of the 1980s, when nations sought to dismantle rival economies by targeting commercial hulls in the Persian Gulf. The tightly regulated shipping lanes meant colossal vessels could not maneuver away from a naval ambush. The primary weapons of choice were rudimentary spiked contact mines chained to the shallow seafloor. The strategic pressure peaked on April 14, 1988. The United States ship Samuel B. Roberts reversed into a submerged 253-pound mine hidden within the shipping corridor. The resulting detonation physically lifted the 445-foot steel warship on a massive shock wave, fracturing the keel and flooding the engine room with 2,000 tons of seawater. A secondary fireball burst vertically out of the exhaust stack. The subsequent United States retaliation involved attack aircraft and naval surface groups systematically neutralizing nearly half of the opposing operational fleet. The tactical lessons of that era remain entirely relevant to modern maritime transit through these contested waters. The immediate threat matrix has evolved far beyond conventional frigates and rudimentary explosives. Commercial bridge crews must constantly scan for sophisticated influence mines, cruise missiles concealed within coastal mountain caves, and swarms of armed speedboats carrying magnetic explosives. These crews operate in a perpetual state of heightened psychological alert as they navigate the strait. They remain fully aware they are sailing through a pre-sighted target area, where fragile geopolitical deterrence serves as their only true armor. By the first week of April 2026, the fragile geopolitical balance surrounding the Strait of Hormuz completely collapsed. Local factions instituted a shadow blockade, demanding that transiting commercial vessels pay maritime tolls using untraceable cryptocurrency networks. Diplomatic negotiations immediately stalled, leaving civilian bridge crews trapped in a rapidly escalating standoff. The silent conflict materialized just 48 hours ago, on April 8th. The Panama-registered oil tanker Aurora was navigating the outbound traffic lane near the jagged Omani coast when news of fresh regional airstrikes crackled over the bridge radio. The captain made a unilateral survival calculation and ordered a desperate 180-degree emergency turn. Executing this massive maneuver within a restrictive 2-mile-wide corridor required immense mechanical torque. The heavy rudder pushed to maximum starboard, while the bronze propeller churned the shallow sea into a frothing vortex. The 330-meter steel hull shuddered violently as it temporarily barricaded the established shipping lane. Abandoning its trajectory, the Aurora retreated deep into the comparative safety of the Persian Gulf. Within 3 hours of this maneuver, panicked maritime insurers suspended all commercial traffic through the planetary choke point. Not a single ballistic missile was fired, and no sovereign fleets engaged in direct combat. Yet the mechanical act of one supertanker reversing course sent an immediate shockwave through international financial markets. This incident proved that paralyzing the global economy requires only the credible threat of geographic closure to instantly weaponize the ocean. In the immediate aftermath of this recent maritime suspension, the global energy apparatus scrambles for overland alternatives that simply do not exist at scale. Regional powers have spent decades engineering massive terrestrial bypasses to circumvent the restrictive strait. The Saudi East-West pipeline serves as a 745-mile steel artery, pushing 7 million barrels of crude daily toward the Red Sea. Further south, the United Arab Emirates operates the 48-inch Habshan-Fujairah system, diverting another 1.5 million barrels to the Gulf of Oman. Yet, the mechanical math of global consumption remains entirely unforgiving. Even operating at absolute maximum structural pressure, these overland valves cannot replace the 20 million barrels of daily maritime flow currently trapped by the blockade. The international industrial infrastructure is physically locked into a severe energy deficit it cannot out-engineer. The towering glass and steel skylines of the Persian Gulf were financed entirely by extracting subterranean hydrocarbons from the surrounding desert sands. This hyper-modern sovereignty remains strictly contingent on the uninterrupted passage of heavy cargo through 21 miles of shallow oceanic water. The current disruption strips away the persistent illusion of a post-industrial society. The clinical reality reveals that the international economy is not sustained by digital data, but by the relentless physical combustion of prehistoric matter. Mechanized supply chains demand their daily injection of raw crude oil. This narrow transit corridor will dictate the operational survival of modern civilization. Decades of technological advancement cannot sever this physical tether to a highly volatile aquatic trap. The daily functioning of the modern world operates under a permanent standoff, suspended only by the fragile mechanics of maritime deterrence.